is essentially the same. Everyone writes the same song.
Hunter x Hunter is a series I've adored for years, written by Yoshiro Togashi. One of Togashi's best characters, and one of my favorite side characters ever, is Kurapika Kurta, the last remaining survivor of the infamous Kurta clan. He is such a special and unique character, and today I wanted to tell and explain why he is one of my favorite characters ever. At the beginning, Hunter x Hunter is a story full of adventure, joyous obnoxious children, and plenty of murderers. The story starts with an abandoned child, Gon Freaks, who finds out his dad is a legendary hunter, someone who is a part of the best of humanity. Despite Jing leaving Gon, he admires him and aspires to be a hunter himself. Kurapika is just as much of a protagonist as Gon, having multiple arcs dedicated to him and his goal, and his journey mirroring Gon's. Kurapika is part of a group called the Kurta clan. When feeling overwhelming emotions such as fear or anger, the clan members' eyes turn into a majestic scarlet color. These eyes cause them many problems and eventually their downfall. They isolated themselves from everyone as people either wanted to kill them and sell their eyes or thought their eyes were evil and satanic. The Phantom Troop slaughtered every clan member possible except one, Kurapika. This started Kurapika's mission for revenge, swearing to recover the eyes of his people and slaughter the troop. The first, and I think the most important thing about Kurapika's character, is understanding the aftermath of trauma and the effects of survivor's guilt. I think Kurapika embodies this trauma perfectly. Kurapika's motives are those of justice and revenge. Since a regular justice system is not able to deal with the troop as their talented Nen users, only hunters can learn Nen and would be able to deal with them. So Kurapika became one. Kurapika is a Byronic hero, which is a literary character type made by the writer Lord Byron, a type of character who is a brooding rebel and is haunted by a dark secret from his past. Byronic heroes are marked not only by their outright rejection of traditional heroic values and virtues, but also by their remarkable intelligence, strong feelings of affection and hatred, impulsiveness, strong sensual desires, moodiness, cynicism, and morbid sensibilities. These characteristics are all part of Kurapika. He is beyond determined and hates the Phantom Troop with an absolute resolve. Kurapika is not haunted by a thing he did in the past though, he is haunted by something done to him. He is haunted by something he will never get over. He's haunted by the genocide of his people. This is where I want to talk about his dynamics with the other characters in the main cast. Him and Kurapika are one of the most important and complex dynamics in this manga. For a more in-depth look on this though, I would suggest a video by Radman who explains it in much more detail than I will. Gon is a mirror for Kurapika. They both grew up fairly isolated from the outside world and became hunters with a purpose, both dealing with something very close to them, their family. Kurapika chases his clan's eyes as he sees hunting them down as a part of his justice, and Gon chases his father. However, the biggest difference is Gon's father is very much alive, which gives him a much better ending to his story than Kurapika's. Kurapika, unlike Gon with Whale Island, has no home to come back to and no one waiting for him. Even their Nen mirrors each other, with Gon being an enhancer and Kurapika being a specialist. Gon is the first person to set in motion Kurapika's development. Kurapika first started accepting people around him when Gon thanked him for saving him in Katsuo. They grew closer during the hunter exams, and in Yorknew, Gon helped Kurapika with his hunt for the spiders despite the Mafia's reward being ring-snided. And he even let Chrollo, the head of the Phantom Troop, live in order to save Gon and Killua, something that he would never do at the beginning of the series. Leorio is someone Kurapika despised in the beginning for being materialistic and arrogant. He learned to respect Leorio after finding out that his dream to become a doctor isn't completely shallow. Kurapika specifically offered to team up with Leorio because they can achieve things easier and have a lot of trust for each other. Kurapika and Leorio's relationship can also parallel Gon and Killua. Kurapika's early goal before the massacre was to find a doctor to cure Pyro's eye condition, which can also be a reason Kurapika likes Leorio so much, to fulfill his promise even though his friend is long dead. With Leorio, I believe that since he couldn't save his friend, he thinks he can save Kurapika from his very obvious suicidal tendencies. He made a deal to join the Zodiacs only if Kurapika joins as well. Kurapika probably wouldn't be friends with Killua if both of them weren't part of the group. For example, Killua didn't really want to help Kurapika after the troop bounties were cancelled, or when Killua was invisibly happy for Kurapika when the spiders were seemingly killed. Despite being a very underdeveloped friendship, Kurapika does feel comfortable around Killua and can enjoy his company, which helped him make friends later on. However, I would say that Killua and Gon parallel Kurapika and Pyro in Volume 0, even down to the gay ass "it has to be you," which made me tear up slightly. I believe that all these relationships are important to Kurapika's character development, and his slight change in personality, while not being striking, is still there. I also think Kurapika purposely pushes them away because he doesn't want happiness. He believes that he needs anger to complete his journey. Kurapika's long and unquenchable lust for revenge is the reason I consider his character a tragedy. Most people who watch Hunter x Hunter want Kurapika to be at peace, as would anyone watching someone in Kurapika's position, but because of his obvious and tragic flaws, he will never be at peace. Even if he retrieves the eyes, he's too far gone to be happy, let alone return to who he was. This is the last monster with the last of the eyes. Among them, Pyro. My journey may finally begin, but where would I go? There is no home for me to return to, and nobody to welcome me back. I have nothing left. This quote perfectly encaptures what I was talking about. Kurapika starts with a high source of pride and honor in the beginning. Every time Kurapika has to coerce someone, threaten them, or even just be dishonest or put on an act, like when he flirts with Bisky, he loses a part of that pride and sense of honor and betrays his own morals. Even if Mr. Kurta does retrieve the eyes, he'll still be alone and have no family or home. He still has his friends, but the sad part about it is he doesn't want to burden his friends with this problem. When surrounded by them, he is uncomfortable experiencing happiness. Trauma can come in many different ways, and the type Kurapika has is complex trauma. His is so great and hard to quantify in real life terms. Complex trauma is a needed label for when events are so horrible that there is no other way to describe or treat it. An important thing to know about trauma is the way people cope with it. Some people drink, others do drugs, but Kurapika was just 11 at the time of the genocide of his people. What he experienced would be different for an adult to handle, but he was only a child. If someone looks at Kurapika, it's clear that he tries his best to desperately look for control and sensibility, scrambling to feel like he has the slightest control over his life. It's akin to watching a small animal scramble and cling to life. The next thing I want to expand on is Kurapika's character and his ties to Absurdism. Absurdism is a philosophical school of thought at which, according to Absurdists, there is no greater meaning to life or the universe, and even if there were, we as humans would be unable to comprehend it. Thus, there is no point in trying. Where Absurdism diverges from existentialism is in its disapproval of personal interpretation, whereas existentialism urges individuals to find their own meaning in an otherwise chaotic and nonsensical reality. Absurdism rejects this ideal and insists that there is no point in searching for any kind of meaning. There is no meaning to anything, and that's okay. Of course, this leads to further issues and concerns, as some people are unable to live a meaningless existence without surrendering to depression or apathy. I think Kurapika's primary inner conflict is not just getting revenge or reclaiming his clan's eyes, but it's to find reason. He thinks that he has this in finding his clanman's eyes, but what is after that? He desperately tries to make sense of the events around him, but constantly finds himself at odds with the absurdity of reality and human behaviors. He is hyper aware of everyone and everything around him. He reads books to gain knowledge and trains his body to be able to control every situation he finds himself in. He develops a Nen ability in a way that specifically requires his utmost control, his chains. He directly channels his power through them rather than using another technique that doesn't require the user to be present. The chains not only capture, confine, and bind, but they also impart dominance. They are in control. Interestingly, Kurapika has a chain wrapped around his own heart. This is a symbol of his resolve, and it shows that he is not only trying to control the world around him, but he also seeks complete control of himself. People who have experienced trauma have trouble letting go of these emotions because they have lived with them for so long that they don't know what they do without them. And it is thanks to Togashi's spectacular writing that an arc like Kurapika's can come together so well and convey such unprecedented emotions. We switch to Yorknew City, one of the best arcs in Hunter x Hunter and the first arc where Kurapika acts as the main character. We switch to the second best moment in the arc, Uvigen's killing. This marks the first step in Kurapika's vengeance. Despite his success with this, Kurapika is still as empty and bloodthirsty as before, and this carries over to his encounter with Chrollo. Chrollo is the leader of the Phantom Troop, and Kurapika has captured him. But though Chrollo is clearly at a disadvantage, having been captured by Kurapika, he remains cool and level-headed, his relaxed smile painting a stark contrast to his captor's expression of rage. The reason that this scene plays out so differently from what one would expect is that Chrollo is not Kurapika's true antithesis. In fact, they have a lot more in common than they do differently. All the rage that Kurapika has does not only stem from the act of genocide, but from its senselessness. While he tries to wring an explanation out of the troop, the truth is the Kurta clan were killed for money. Their eyes were valuable, so they were killed. It's as simple as that. Since the troop are thieves for hire, they have probably murdered and slaughtered people many times. Chrollo is simply a career thief, and Kurapika is left to despair at the randomness of his clan's demise. In order to spur on his own life and meaning for existence, Kurapika concentrates all his rage into a single target and lives to find and destroy it. This quest for revenge allows him to keep moving forward. The complexity of this is brilliantly done. Once someone rewatches or rereads Hunter x Hunter, it's clear that Kurapika's path might be a little hypocritical and foolish. We understand, obviously, that destroying the troop is not going to erase the past, and it is certainly not going to leave Kurapika in a better place than where he started. In this way, he feels like a multi-dimensional character who has to pay the price for all of his actions and reconsider his path moving forward. Someone who was doomed as soon as he started. There are many contradictions with Kurapika's thinking, and I'm almost convinced he knows his quest is wrong, but keeps on his destructive path as a form of punishment. The theme of absurdism is even highlighted in the setting of Yorknew. Urbanization is believed to be the harbinger of ideologies such as absurdism, which surrenders to the idea that man cannot comprehend reality. The main reason for this is the downfall of religious belief in the modern era, and a resulting lack of faith in an ordered universe and a story to make sense of our surroundings. In this way, the bleak nightscapes and neon high-rises of Yorknew mirror the era of absurdism perfectly. There's also very clear contrast and ties to religious imagery. Kurapika bears many similarities to Satan in both role and aesthetic. The Phantom Troop to Jesus and the 12 Apostles, with Hisoka being Judas and Chrollo being Jesus, of course. The reversal of roles between the two factions underscores the insufficiency of religious allegories in a story as complex as this one. Further, it emphasizes the idea of absurdity and modernity over religion and antiquity. Towards the end of the anime, Kurapika's focus slightly shifts, turning to retrieve his clan's eyes rather than just killing the troop. Once again, this is a futile act that serves no purpose beyond providing Kurapika with another semblance of meaning. He continues to look for meaning where there is none. Even as he approaches his new goal, we learn that he feels a deep sense of loss and regret at having nothing and no one to return to. This goes back and shows how alike Kurapika and Chrollo are. Both Chrollo and Kurapika were isolated from people growing up. The Kurapika clan with reasons I stated before, and Meteor City being a place of people with no identity. Both places were looked down upon and feared by the rest of society. At the beginning, with no real knowledge of either side, they were complete opposites, but as the series goes on, Kurapika and Chrollo become more and more outstandingly similar. Kurapika definitely has a shorter temper, which is usually triggered by the spiders, but Chrollo is interesting on that subject because he wasn't really fuming with anger when Kurapika killed Uvo. He was mostly sad. In this latest arc, we see Chrollo in almost the same position as Kurapika when he began his journey. Pika had two goals, regaining his brethren's eyes and chasing the spiders down. Chrollo and his squad also have two goals this time around. Nobunaga told us that they're after some treasure, but the big one is that they're after the walking demon Hisoka. When we first saw Chrollo on the boat, he looked clearly angry, broken, and wanting revenge because of Shaunark and Kortorpi's death. They got murdered and he wasn't there to protect them. The last part of that is arguably the most important, as it's a feeling both shared and expressed. In terms of their nen abilities, both Chrollo and Kurapika are specialists, and both of them have an insane amount of Hatsu at their disposal. No one in the series even comes close to these two except for Meruem and Netero. However, both are now dead. In chapter 361, we learned of Kurapika's new ability, an ability that pierces the body of the target, drains their aura, and steals one of their Hatsu abilities. It's the exact same concept as Chrollo's main Hatsu. When Kurapika takes abilities, he does it violently, with his target screaming in pain, a polar opposite of Chrollo's calm and methodical approach. And honestly, I think neither of the two will kill each other, or even have a major fight. But I'll probably be wrong, and I love that. The philosopher, and I'm gonna butcher his name, Friedrich Nietzsche, once said, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." Evidently, Kurapika is still in the midst of an existential crisis, and his arc cannot be completed in a positive way until he moves past his clan's tragic fate and searches for his own meaning. One of the panels I like in the manga is when Kurapika meets Prince Wobble, who is the 14th prince of the Kaken Empire and the daughter of Queen Kito, the youngest out of the 14 children, just being an infant. Prince Wobble is forced to participate in a death game, or the Succession War. This is contrasted by his quest to find the Scarlet Eyes. The eyes symbolize the past and death, while Wobble symbolizes the future and life. Kurapika's obsession with the death of his clan blinds him to the value of life. Despite Kurapika having prepared himself to do everything to get the eyes back and having adopted a very cool disposition, he meets someone who challenges said disposition. Someone who can remind him he is more than a cold machine whose only motivation is to honor his tribe. His glare is one of realization, but being so far gone, he has nothing to do but move forward. One of the best messages in this series, and probably my favorite, is communicated by Jing when he tells Gon, "Enjoy all the little detours to the fullest, because that is where you will find things more important than what you're looking for." This is exactly what Kurapika fails to do. He is so dedicated to his hunt that he simply fails to live his own life and find meaning in his personal experiences. He finds meaning in places that he shouldn't be. He's headed down a dark path, and if he succeeds in his mission of collecting the eyes, it won't be a hero's success. It would be a sad conclusion to a poisonous quest. In the end, Kurapika is a person with outstanding inner conflict, the duality of doing everything to reach his dark goal, but on the other hand being too much of a caring person to have that define him. Is such an interesting character trait, and that, and everything I've stated in this video, is what cements him as one of my favorite characters of all time. His story is a tragedy, and the perfect representation of someone living for the dead instead of just living. My name is Wisehat, and I hope you enjoyed this video. please subscribe. It would mean a lot. And have a good day.